Hello, welcome. We are live. Hello, Coach Leanne. I'm so glad you're with me.
Oh, Coach Susan, it is such an honor to be here with you today. Hello, friends.
Hello, and we are live on all the platforms today. So wherever you're joining in from, you are welcome. We're glad you're here. We do want to remind you, though, that this is public, wherever you're tuning in from. So be mindful as you engage with us. We do want to invite your engagement. We love to have you participate as much as possible. But just remember, whatever you're putting in the chat, anybody can see.
Right. And this topic, Susan, today, how to love him without losing you, could be a big topic where some thoughts may come up, some emotions may arise that you don't want everybody to see. So I appreciate that reminder that this is a public platform. And at the same time, we appreciate you being here. And we encourage vulnerability and authenticity in this space as we lean into these topics.
Yes. And I loved your point before we got started, Leanne, when you said we can really replace that hymn with any word. How to love blank without losing you, right? So if it's a mother, if it's a sister, if it's a best friend, if it's your work life, if you find that you're losing yourself because of something else in your life, it's taking the place of God and you're losing a sense of self, you're welcome here.
Susan, I love that you brought that up. And that would be a great question. Maybe, friends, you are joining us here because you're wondering, about your key relationship, your primary relationship with your spouse. Maybe, like Susan said, the hymn you could replace with something else. I was sharing with Susan right before we went live today about this topic of, how do I still love all the work I get to do, love my team, love the women I work with without losing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were to type in all the different words that you could put in place of him, I'm just curious, what would you put in there? What takes the place? What becomes an idol? What becomes a distraction from claiming your beautiful gift as an image bearer of God from being lived out every day? Wow, that's kind of a big question, but that just came up for me, Susan. Every time we get together, God spurs my heart. Thank you for the love you bring into this space.
Mm-hmm. It's such a great question, and hopefully it's causing everyone to think. I know it's causing me to think about what aids in the derailment of me really stepping into my purpose.
That word is big, that derailment.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it is for you, Susan? What causes you to derail and stop caring for yourself, stop listening to yourself, stop doing the me search that we talk about, all that?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a little bit like you and I were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, is there's a sense of unbalance that happens. So there's a subtlety there that's a little bit sneaky for me, is that the balance gets off in terms of my work life versus my personal life. So developing relationships is a high value of mine, and yet it can sometimes take a back seat to the things that are most pressing in my life, mainly work and finances. That becomes very loud in my life sometimes. And so then other things that are important to me can take a back seat. And so rebalancing and making sure that everything that's important to me gets an opportunity and time is kind of where I can tend to very subtly lose myself.
Susan, that's so powerful, that balancing and the rebalancing. And we have an opportunity to visit things like that. January, February every year is an amazing opportunity for many people to rebalance, to reset, and to restore some of maybe what 2024 took away. And I know that's some of what I've been thinking about too. So thanks for bringing that forward. I think that that rebalance gives us an opportunity to press pause. Maybe you, like me, girls, are looking at January like an appetizer or some practice for the rest of the year, that you're not quite balanced yet and you're still figuring out who you are and how not to lose you any more than this year than you already did last year. Because I don't know about you, but I lost little pieces of me last year.
Mhm.
I did. I'm just keeping it very real with you. There was pieces of me, some of the best parts of me I lost. And so I'm working on getting some of that back.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And so this could be a meaningful topic for many people out there, but I do want to value what it says, how to love him without losing you, because in our community, that's a big one.
It is, Susan. And I'm looking at the chat, and we have people from all over the world. We're so grateful that you're here. And Karen says, business life, plus I feel like I do it all with my family, and so much responsibility is on my shoulders. So you're feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders. And so I'm curious about how does that weight prevent you from loving others fully and even knowing what love feels like, sounds like, looks like to you, right? And then I'm seeing also others' expectations, not speaking up. This is ways that they're losing. So we get lost in other people's expectations. We stop speaking up. We don't have good boundaries. Oh, wow, this is big. Probably being dishonest instead of politely expressing myself,
Mm.
even if not everyone or everything needs an explanation. Wow.
Mm. Yeah. Wow, indeed. There may be some passivity there rather than assertiveness. Whether you choose to speak up verbally or not, um, moving into an assertive space may be more of an active place for you of really taking care of your own needs.
Wow,
Mm.
Susan, that's great insight. Because, we've got this scale, right, where we can be really passive or we can be aggressive
Mhm.
when it comes to either losing us, loving others, helping our needs get met, all the things. Where do we fall on that continuum? From passive to super, or I guess I was over here, passive to super aggressive, right? And then in the middle, somewhere is that balance that you spoke about, Susan, that
Mm.
assertiveness with ourselves, the willingness to claim our identity, to own it, and then take responsibility for it, to make choices to live out who God created us to be.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. In my family, resistance was futile, but I need a healthy balance plus detachment. Okay, so those might be some skills that you can implement in order to regain a sense of self. I love that.
Indeed, and that's one way that you can love Him without losing you,
Mm.
is to healthy detach. And what does that really look like? So, ladies, we would love to hear from you. Many of you have been with us for years. Some of you are just getting to know us moments ago, and we are so grateful for you that you've chosen to spend this time. So, when you think of detachment, it doesn't always include the silent treatment. It doesn't include withholding in unhealthy ways. Unhealthy detachment is a powerful tool
Mm.
to hold on to the woman that you were created to be. Yeah.
Mhm. Not only that, Leanne, detachment is a way to love others, to let them be who they want to be, right?
Yes.
To allow them to define their own life, to make their own choices. It's actually a way to respect them and to offer loving kindness. You get the freedom to be you. And that's really what detachment is all about.
Yeah. Not only do you get the freedom to be you, but you give somebody else the gift of freedom to be them. And so,
Yeah.
as I was thinking, I mean, it goes both ways, and it's hard. This work is not easy. And that's why we come on here live multiple times. That's why Leslie is doing a workshop here on February 13th, not here, but in a private space, is because these issues come up over and over again with us as we grow, as we mature, as we get older. And so if for me, Susan, one thing that came up for me as I was getting ready to share here is if I'm going to be myself and give someone the freedom to be themselves in a relationship with me, then that includes letting them make their own decisions and at the same time holding on to my values.
Mm.
I may not agree with the decisions that my loved ones make. They may be very contrary to a decision I may make. But can I love them if I disagree with some of their decisions?
Yeah. And can you? Can you still love somebody if you disagree with their decisions? Is that possible? What does that look like? Yeah, it's a great question.
It's a big one for me. And I've had to wrestle with it, to be honest. I've had to wrestle with it because I often find that some of my conflicts, when I don't love people well, or when I go into the disease to please, I realize that our values are having a collision. And oftentimes it's me that is compromising my values to try and please or acquiesce to somebody else so I don't disappoint them.
Mm.
And that's something I work on. And I think it's part of what's stamped in my DNA from very, very, very early on. And I'm grateful that I have the awareness of that, but it's something I have to make a choice. I have
Mhm.
to make a choice to let other people decide what is important for them. And I also I have the privilege of knowing what matters most to me.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
I can let other people choose their path forward and at the same time not compromise my own path
Mm.
forward.
Mhm. And I love that word awareness that you shared, having the awareness of your patterns from long ago. We all have those patterns long ago. And once we bring them into an awareness, we can do something about it. And it's so important. And so Leanne mentioned the disease to please, right? That is one of the ways in which you can lose yourself through people pleasing. There are many other ways. So if you put on your awareness, ladies, or those of you who are watching, what is your own pattern? What ways do you behave that cause you to lose yourself? Perhaps it's people pleasing. Perhaps it's codependency. Maybe it's that deep fear of abandonment that you may have. Maybe it's that blurred boundaries. You don't believe in boundaries. Perhaps somebody told you boundaries aren't Christian, and so you don't have any. Um, Maybe it's just sacrificing your dreams, your personal goals, because somebody said you need to be a sacrifice to other people. And you bought into that to the place where you're losing your own purpose. Maybe you have an emotional dependence on others. You need them to validate you and to offer you something emotionally in order for you to be okay. And maybe it's that total loss of self-care. There are many ways in which we can lose ourselves, but we can't really make change until we become aware of what those ways are. So that's sort of what we're calling you to do, inviting you into, is just that awareness. And what ways, what patterns do you have that cause you to lose yourself?
Susan, there was so many nuggets in what you just shared. Thank you for that.
Mm.
And if I sit here for a minute with what you just shared, and I think about how am I, so many women here in our community are navigating very difficult or destructive relationships.
Mhm.
That's just who we tend to speak to, love on, and coach. And so oftentimes we have to define what love is in a relationship that is hard when we are trying to maintain our identity.
Mhm.
And so, one thing that came up for me as you were sharing is that love acknowledges free will.
Mm. Yes, I love that. It's huge and it's all over the Bible, isn't it? That truth. That is how God loves us.
Right. And so, if we're going to love others, God commands us to love others as Christ loved the church. Okay. So it acknowledges free will, it respects boundaries. Jesus had boundaries.
Mhm.
When I was at a live the other day, or maybe it was in one of our coaching groups, but it was really interesting because when I talked about boundaries in the Bible, they were like, well, it started in the garden when God said, do not eat from this tree. That was
Mm.
a boundary.
Mhm.
That was a boundary. It was a command, it was a boundary, and it was busted. It was broken. And so when we learn to respect boundaries of our own and other people's, we release others to make their own choices while entrusting them to God.
Mhm.
And
That's
I'm
that's
not saying this is easy, Susan. Oh boy, this is something I struggle with. So,
releasing someone you love to God is hard work, and it's not a one and done either, is it, Leanne?
no, sometimes it's a second by second choice,
Mm.
moment by moment, day by day. Maybe it's week by week. Maybe it's month by month for you, wherever it is in you. But what would that be like if love meant releasing them and entrusting them to God? What if that's part of loving Him well?
Mm. Mhm. What just happened for me while you were talking, Leanne, is I imagine that weight on the shoulders gets removed. It gets handed over to one who can carry the weight.
Oh my goodness, Susan, that's so powerful.
Mm.
And it's like going palms up and bringing it to God and saying, this is yours. This is yours. And I see a question. Is it wrong to ask your husband where he's going? Absolutely not. I think it's really empowering to ask him where he's going, and it gives you some clarity. I will share, I
Mhm.
will share, sweetheart, in pure love, I say this. If you are going to ask him where he is going, be ready to receive what it is he is going to share with you, and stay in curiosity about it and not judgment.
Mm.
Stay
Mhm.
in curiosity and not judgment, because here's the deal. Here's the deal. If they want to walk a different way than where you're going, then can you trust God to handle the outcome of that? I remember years ago, Susan, different areas in my own marriage where we were facing a lot of challenges. We just were not seeing eye to eye on many things. And I had a wise someone in my life share with me, wow, it sounds like you are on two different trains. And it was such a beautiful picture for me. When you
Mm.
think of a train track, they can be going, one can be going north, one can be going south. And that's about where we were on this particular issue. There is a point perhaps where they will intersect, where you'll meet. You've got some commonalities, but oh my goodness, they continue to go in opposite directions. And what will you do with that? And so just be ready. If you're going to ask where someone is going, where they want to go, where they currently are, be ready to hear the answer, because it may
Mhm.
surprise you. And just like Susan used that beautiful word, derailed, we don't want it to derail you, because that could be losing you.
Mhm. Yeah, and I see some of that in the chat as she's responding too. You're getting an angry response, and he's saying, "Don't ask anymore." Right? That's giving you information, right? So he doesn't want to share with you where you're going. So obviously, you're going to have some some interest. And what does that mean? But we've got to be careful about what we make that mean. And I'm sure there's much more to this than I know, and perhaps more than you know, whoever's writing this question, and is what's behind that. What's behind the anger? So emotions are normal. So you asked, is it normal? Emotions are normal. Abuse is never okay. So I don't know what we're talking about. Are we talking about the emotion of anger? Are we talking about some sort of angry outburst that's abusive towards you, right? We want to distinguish between those two things. But where you might be losing yourself is by maybe your peace is being derailed because you're falling into a place of shame, right? And that's maybe where you want to look at, how do I not fall in that place of shame? Shame is really this horrible, painful feeling of I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me, right? It's an attack on your personhood, basically, right? And so I don't know that anyone can put that on you without you allowing them to put that on you, because those are your thoughts in your head. Are you going to agree with that, or are you not going to agree with that?
Oh, that's so good. And we don't need to agree with shame. There is one who is the author of shame, and he's our enemy. It can be very debilitating. Guilt, on the other hand, can be helpful. It helps. I can feel guilty if I, like I did the other day, I had 2 bowls of ice cream in one day, and I have made this commitment to healthier eating. So I was not loving me well. I totally lost myself in the day. And part of it was because I found my unhealthy pattern, Susan. I was trying to please people. I was overdoing it. I was depleted. And using your word, I was derailed by some of the circumstances in my life. And so I did not pause. I did not think about what I was doing. I just went over to the freezer. I opened it up and I had 2 giant bowls of ice cream. Yep, in one day. And it was great. It made me feel good in the moment.
And then what?
And then what? And then I felt guilty before I went to bed. I had gas. I was bloated. I felt icky. My skin was buzzing because I don't do a lot of sugar. And so, yeah, it was a real thing. I had a very strong body reaction to me not living my values of being a woman who eats healthy, because I let it be compromised by other people's decisions or by the demands I told myself were on my life that maybe perhaps weren't. So I didn't have a lot of dignity in the moment.
Well, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable, and the ability to look back on that and to gain some awareness, and perhaps give yourself some future advice, right? Instead of looking at this like failure that brings on shame, is that you noticed how your body felt. You got some feedback about what 2 bowls of ice cream does, or about what some horrible self-talk does to you.
Right.
And you can learn from that, right? And you can come up with a plan.
Well, I love that, Susan. I can learn from it and come up with a plan. And so, if this is resonating with you in any way, we want to encourage you to save your seat at the table for February 13th. Leslie is going to be doing a workshop, and it is called, Susan, tell them what it's called, because it's got a really powerful title.
I'm not okay if you're not okay.
Oh,
I love this workshop.
I do too. It's such a good workshop. And so if you go to leslievernick.com/join, I think it's webinar, join webinar. There it is. Thanks, Susan. And it's free. Why wouldn't you take advantage of this? Right? Because she's going to work on our mindsets and talk to us about, so these other situations in my life were not okay. So I just let myself not be okay and indulge in ice cream. I just did, because other things were not okay. And is that the way I want to continue to live my life in 2025? No. And so I let the guilt of that, I let sitting with it, and like you said, Susan, learning from it, I let it change my direction. And now I'm coming up with some I am statements so I don't have to lose myself. I don't have to, even if the situations around me are spinning out of control or feel chaotic.
Can you just define a little bit what an I am statement for those who have maybe not heard that before?
Well, sure. For me, it's who I am and who I am not.
Mhm.
Okay. So if we go to the ice cream analogy, okay, I am not an ice cream binger. That's not who I am. I am someone who enjoys ice cream. So I can learn by saying it that way, I can know where my boundaries are.
Mm. Mhm.
Okay. I am responsible to buy healthy ice cream. There is healthy ice cream out there. Did you all know that?
Mhm.
Okay. So I am responsible with what I put in my mouth. I am not responsible for what am I not responsible for, Susan? Help me out. What if I'm responsible for what I put in my mouth? What am I not responsible for in light of our topic today?
You're putting it in those terms that maybe it's not coming up for me.
Okay. So
Yeah.
something that just and I was it was a real genuine question because I didn't even know until I said it. And so I am not responsible for other people's emotions, their
Mm.
directions, or what they throw at me.
Mm.
But I am responsible for what I put in my mouth in light of my emotions.
Mhm.
Oh, this is real in the moment for me. This is taking my ice cream binge a little bit deeper than I had planned. So thank you for that. Oh, and somebody, Rosalie said, you are not responsible to fixing others' problems.
Very
Wow, there's a golden nugget right there.
Mhm. Or doing what they want you to do, right? Pleasing
Oh
them.
boy. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks for diving into that. And those I am statements can be very powerful. And so you got to watch what you're saying to yourself about who you are. And that goes back to shame. And I see somebody is asking what's the difference between guilt and shame. Um, Guilt is I've done something wrong. So Leanne might have been having some guilt. That's not who I am. I'm not an ice cream binger, and yet I did it once and I don't like how this feels, right? So maybe some feelings of guilt. Shame is a little bit different. Not that I did something wrong, but I am something wrong. It's a condemnation on your personhood. It's a total destruction of who you are as a person. And so Leanne talked about that comes from the enemy. The enemy wants to destroy you and would love for you to sink in shame.
Oh
But
boy.
we have a savior who lifts us out of shame and says, that's not who you are.
Mm, that is so good. That is so good. Really appreciate that. And I think even loving myself is part of not losing myself, Susan. And sometimes we can be told that loving ourselves is selfish. And
Yeah.
here's the deal, it's not selfish, it's called good stewardship. And the Lord wants us to love ourselves. He created us. And so if we hate on, shame on, belittle ourselves, we're disrespecting the woman that God created us to be.
Mhm.
We truly are. And
Mhm.
so we can have an opportunity to change that self-talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, my ice cream binge had some consequences. I stepped on the scale the next morning. It was 2 pounds up, girlfriends. I mean, literally from two bowl, that was like a pound. That was a pound up. There was consequences to the choices I made, not to love myself well or to lose my um, agency in the moment because of what was going on around me. And it's okay to do it once in a while. I mean, we're human. Okay, we're having a human experience. I'm not going to totally be down on myself. But if it's a pattern over and over and over again where I lose myself and I sink into despair and I allow myself to be derailed emotionally, physically, spiritually, then that's a red flag that I've got some work to do on me because I am not loving others well nor myself well.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, and that importance of getting back on course when we're derailed. right? So that we can correct and still end up in the destination we want to go rather than being derailed and continuing on and landing in a totally different place than we want to be.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, and some of these concepts get tricky, right? Like
Oh, they do.
self-care is selfish, right? People twist things, and many of you in our community are manipulated, you're coerced, you're spiritually mistreated, right? And there's some real abuse going on. And so then you have to be careful to define these terms for yourself. What is self care? It's self
Mhm.
stewardship. It is God given, it's expected of you by God. It is not a selfish thing. And I think there's also this concept of when we marry, we have to move into the we, and we're all about the we. We lose the me and we become the we and only the we, right? And I don't think that's how it's intended to be. I think we are still very much two me's who come together and decide to be a we sometimes, but you don't lose a sense of self. But those things get twisted, and people use that to coerce you. Like you have a role, and all you are is your role as wife or mother now, right? You can't have a sense of self.
Mhm. Susan, I love that you brought that up, and this just came up for me as you were sharing. You plus me, no matter who it is, equals a we. Okay, that's very true. That's very true. God's word says, "Those whom God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Okay, whether you, Susan and I together here on this live, we are a we for you. Together, we are collaborating, we are cooperating, we are bringing our collective wisdom and our love for God to you around this topic. So we are better together than we could ever be alone doing this for you, right?
Mhm.
That's what that equation would tell you. All right. But you know what I love about even the visual of being here on Facebook Live, Susan, is the box that you created for us has a line, a separation between us.
Mm.
You see, you are in your own frame, and I am in my own frame. That doesn't mean that we're not connected, collaborating, loving one another, and all the things. It just means that you are in Michigan, I
Mhm.
am in Arizona, you are Coach Susan, I am Coach Leanne. You have ideas and wisdom, and I have ideas and wisdom that we're bringing together, and we meet in the middle with that. And
Mm.
there's something really powerful. You cannot have a we if you do not have, and I might get into trouble for saying this to some of you, but you cannot have a we if you do not individually have a you and a me.
Mhm.
It gets blurred. So you don't no longer have a you and a me. You have a, here, you have a yum. There, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I'm just making up words here, but I hope I'm making a point. Individually, based on our topic today, how do we love him without losing ourselves? So for me, I get to ask myself, put your name in it. I've been married almost 40 years. It has not always been easy. It has been up and down and a roller coaster and a tidal wave and a tsunami, and it's been a beautiful beach. Okay. So if I were to, and I want to encourage you, friends, how do I love Dwayne without losing me?
Mhm.
If you were to put your names in there, make this personal. We want this to be life giving for you, these lives
Mm.
that we do. We're going to be coming to you live multiple times, right, Susan?
We
In the
are.
days and weeks to come. And we don't want this just to be information. Just like Leslie's webinars and workshops are always transformational, as coaches on her team, we love you and we're committed to you. And we want to see you thrive in 25. It's
Mhm.
going to take some work. And we get to make this stuff personal.
Yeah. Yes, and we do want to give you some nuggets today to take away with you, and Leslie's going to be doing that on the 13th of February. So I hope you're able to join in that. If you can be there live, that's going to be best because she spends a lot of time on question and answer. We're going to take some question and answers here today as
Mhm.
well, but she's going to be training for 1 hour. And she's got a lot of information to bring that's going to be really valuable. But I know Leslie, and she's going to give you an hour and more likely close to 2 hours of her time to answer your questions. So you're going to want to be there live for that because the Q&A doesn't get recorded and sent out to you like the webinar does. But you do have to register. That's not going to be on social media. You're not going to find it on YouTube. You do have to register, even though it's free. So you're going to want to go to leslievernick.com/join webinar to save your space. You can join at noon or 7:30 Eastern, or both.
You can. And you know what's super great about it is there are women just like you, just like me, that are on there curious. They want to learn. They have more of a growth mindset and they want to understand what it means to not lose ourselves, to not need everybody else to be okay for you to be okay. And, so there you're in a community of women and you get to share questions, ask questions, share comments. You get to cheer and celebrate together. And, we cry on those workshops and webinars. We rejoice, we celebrate with one another, and we get real concrete tools and wisdom, biblical, solid wisdom to help us move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I see in our question tracker, how do we get started if we lost ourselves? I told you, I do want to give you some nuggets while you're here today. How do you get started on that? Part of that is just being here, right? Giving yourself this time. Maybe it's being at the webinar to learn more, but also just to begin to have that awareness of who am I and what do I need? Leanne walked us through limits, defining your limits, right? Who I am, who I'm not. Those limits are for you. Your boundaries are for you so that you know who you are and you honor who you are. But it's hard to do that if you don't even don't know who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you need, what you don't need in your life. And so putting just some definition around that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Susan, somebody else had asked, is it okay to ask my husband? And we addressed it a minute ago or a few minutes ago about where he's going. Where somebody is going, to know where they're going, you have to know where they're at. And same with you. And so we get to do a little bit of self-reflection. We get to do a little bit of self-reflection on where is it that we are. So, how do you start if we've lost ourselves? Like Susan said, you're here and we're so grateful. Have you saved your seat at the table for the webinar? You will be glad that you did. And you want to carve out quality time for yourself, undistracted. And just really, be praying now. Those of you who have signed up, I want to encourage you. Start praying now for the Lord to prepare your heart, your mind, your schedule, your soul, and your spirit for what you will hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That question of where am I? Where am I? Who am I? What are my strengths? Those are great questions to get you started. So we mentioned awareness. Having self-awareness is going to be important. Also having self-compassion. You're not going to discover who you are if you come at yourself with judgment and criticism, right? So laying that aside, bringing curiosity and compassion about where you are, where you've been, right? Not a place of judgment. And then just prioritizing yourself. Like being here today. It's prioritizing your need to be here and to continue to do that. Your physical health, your mental health need to become a priority. Finding ways to nourish yourself. What does that even look like, right? Is it through the foods you eat? Is it through the ways that you can comfort and soothe yourself? Those are going to be important things.
They are, Susan. And, I love that you talked about rebalancing and balancing. And so we get, I see that some of our participants today, some of our community is saying, I got my answer. I'm going to focus on me and join the webinar and move forward. So this is part of it too. You get to make a decision on how long you're going to stay there. It's going to be different for everybody. And we are never here to dismiss the challenges that you're going through or to say, hurry up and get out of it. That is not our heart at all. But when we do the self-awareness, when we have God awareness, that He is with us, His presence is right here in the room. He's present with us right here, right now. Do you feel Him? Are you aware of His presence walking with you? And if you're not, then that's some great information for you on what might be your next best step, is inviting the Lord into your journey of learning how to love someone else without losing you. So here's the deal. I challenge you. I challenge myself when it's very difficult for me to have healthy love, because I don't want to unhealthy love someone. Been there, done that. Okay. But when I am challenged with loving someone in healthy, real, honest, and authentic ways, and I don't want to lose me, have I invited the Lord into that desire? Have I asked Him for wisdom? Have I inquired of the Lord? Have I sought Him with a pure heart and saying, I can't do this on my own? Girls, I can't. I can't love people who are unlovely in the moment on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't expect other people. I'm unlovely sometimes. I can be a real stinker and not very lovable. That doesn't, be my actions, okay? The way I can show up and engage with people. And other people can't love me well either if they're not engaged with the Lord. And so remembering that God is the author of love. He is the giver of love. He is the creator of love. He is love. So without Him as part of the equation, right? I mean, if we were to, have this with you and me is the we, and then if we were to, get really deep with it, right? And go further in, I'm just doing, many of you maybe have seen this analogy before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you and me are both growing toward God, we are going to meet in the middle and not get derailed. But if we're on these different paths and so incredibly siloed, we may miss each other. But, friends, I just would be amiss. I don't know, Susan, I'm just feeling led to say this, and I hope it's okay with you. And then we can get to some questions. But friends, if you are here and you do not know the rock of our salvation, if you do not have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and that is, you're wondering about what is it that she means, what is it that Susan and Leanne are talking about inviting God in, we're not going to assume that everybody here listening to us knows Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that is a question that you have, drop it into the chat, send a private message. No one will see it. Maybe you've been walking or talking the talk, but not walking the walk for years. And you're confused about what does it mean to really invite the Lord into your life. We invite you to inquire, to reach out, because God is love. And without Him, we will lose ourselves as we navigate relationships with other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'm glad you took time for that.
Girls, He saved my life. Jesus saved my life. I didn't know how to give or receive love in healthy ways before I came to know the Lord. I did it in all kinds of unhealthy ways. And it caused me a lot of pain. And I'm still healing from some of that. Whew, I didn't know.
Thank you for that honesty and your
Oh, you're
vulnerability.
welcome. Susan, every time we spend time together, you ground me. And I appreciate that you create that safe space. And that's something that we desire to do here on our team is, we're not perfect women. There is no perfect except for our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so, we're learning and growing with you. And I so appreciate your vulnerability and honesty in the chat and your willingness to take that next step.
Yeah. And that's, we have some beautiful questions in the chat that we can get to. But as Leanne said, if you have a need for more information about how to connect with God and how to invite him in your life, please do type in leslievernick.com/question/ leave your details, and we will make sure somebody gets back to you on that. So let me read this question, Leanne. How can I hold myself stronger if I feel that I'm the only one trying to fix this marriage? And I'm still holding him accountable for wrecking it by being unfaithful. I don't know if he really changed, but once in a while, I feel like he's still clinging to those romances that broke the relationship between us. I'm trying to change and get my mouth shut every time I am not pleased with his behavior.
That's a big question. There's a lot of questions there. Sister, we hear you and see you. We hear you and see you. So the first question, how can I hold myself stronger if I feel like I'm the only one trying to fix this marriage? So can I just say that there is no fixing this marriage on your own? And so one thing that you get to do is get healthier yourself. And remembering that love does not control. Fixing can be for me, I'm going to speak from personal experience. Trying to fix was me trying to control or force an outcome. Love gives freedom rather than forcing outcome. John 8:36 says it to us. It says, so if the Son sets you free, you are truly free. And so sometimes I'll speak from my experience. Fixing can be manipulative. It can be coercive, and it can demand my ways. It can demand my everything. So taking ownership and responsibility for myself brings dignity to myself for the choices I will make and allows other people to have dignity for the choices they make. Even if they're making destructive choices, I don't need to join them in it. And so fixing, so to speak, maybe rephrasing that. What would you add, Susan?
Yeah, I love where you're going with that. I think that's so important. Fixing, you can't fix something on your own. You can't fix a marriage on your own if the other person is not participating. But what you can do is tune into your own boundaries. And what do you need for yourself? I just want to say that I'm sure there's a lot of big emotion here. Betrayal, grief, uncertainty, right? Fear of where this is going or not going. There's a lot there for you to sort out. And I wouldn't want you to rush through any of that, because that's part of your own work, is to be able to sit with what you're experiencing in order to be able to really define your limits in that. What can you tolerate? What can't you tolerate in this relationship that's out of your control, right? But you can control your own limits and what you choose to do to keep yourself safe and sane.
That's so good, Susan. And, just like you also talked about becoming strong. Okay. How can I hold myself stronger? You can get stronger today than you were yesterday. And that is by putting some of these practices, some of these strategies in place. Nothing changes if nothing changes. You're not going to get stronger if you don't step into a healthier way of being. And one thing you can do is go to leslievernick.com /join webinar and save your seat and start praying now for insight and wisdom into what your next steps are. So we get to build these spiritual muscles. We get to build love, healthy love muscles, but it takes intention and purpose, practice, a plan, a pause for us to do that. You're not going to get stronger by wanting to be stronger. And this is stuff I've had to learn. I'm just speaking from personal experience here.
Yeah, it's that commitment to lifting the weights that gets you stronger, right? Doing the work. The mental weights here of holding your boundaries, of nourishing yourself, of knowing yourself are all important. And we just lost Coach Leanne, but I'm going to keep going. She may come back. She may not come back. And the next question is, how do you set boundaries when the only thing they are focused on is that we are not having sex? So we talked about boundaries. Hey, welcome back.
I have no idea what happened. All I tried to do was scroll the questions. And so I got stronger by just saying, I'm not going to be a victim to the circumstance.
And here you go, you're back. I just read the next question. We're talking about boundaries.
Okay.
So how do you set boundaries? What's happening here is somebody's pressing in and challenging your boundary. If he's focused on the fact that you've set a boundary around sex, that's what I'm guessing. You've said, I don't feel okay being naked with you because emotionally we're disconnected. I'm just going to take a guess that that's what's happening. He's going to press into that because he doesn't like it. And if this is a person who is typically not good at being responsible for themselves, their emotions, for how they show up, then he's probably going to come at you trying to get you to let down your boundary, right? And it might get coercive, it might get manipulative, it might be very persistent, because his goal is not healing in the relationship. It's not relationship repair. The goal is, let's just have sex. I want what I want, and I don't really care what's going on with you. And I'm sorry if that's your reality, because that's a very painful place to be. But I would encourage you, if that's the boundary you've set for yourself for your own protection, then don't let go of that.
Susan, that was beautiful. So well said. I don't have anything to add. It is okay to have boundaries in this area when you have been betrayed, belittled, and you do not feel safe emotionally, sexually, physically with someone. And healthy love would respect that and seek to make it right and get curious to find out and to repair a ruptured space in the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's a painful one. I hear you, sister. Thank you for your courage and vulnerability. Jesus loved people, but he didn't excuse sin. He called people to repentance and transformation. So if people are having and they refuse to change harmless or harmful behaviors, let them. But do not enable their choices to sacrifice your peace, your dignity, and your well-being. Don't do it.
Yeah. And the next question is very similar in that my husband has chronic pain and acts helpless. I am overwhelmed. What do I do? So pay attention to your overwhelm. Sit with yourself and the overwhelm. Decide what is it that's overwhelming you, that's happening right now. I think you're going to have some awareness into that before you can really decide what's next. What can you do and what can't you do? Right. Is he helpless? I'm guessing he's not. The way you worded this, he acts helpless. So what are the things that he can do for himself that he's asking you to step into? And maybe you have been stepping into them, and that's why you're feeling overwhelmed. So do a little soul searching here. What's causing the overwhelm? Pay attention to that and decide what are the things that you can help with and what are the things that he can do by himself, right? Um, that may be hard to do because he may want you to do it all. So what's going to come up for you if he's disappointed?
And can we sit in other people's disappointment of us if we don't meet all of their expectations?
Mhm.
And that goes back to the I'm okay if you're not okay whole
Right.
topic. And so, chronic pain is horrible. I get it. It's hard to watch, it's hard to experience, it's hard to be in the room with someone in chronic pain because it breaks our heart. And I love what you said, Susan, about identifying what overwhelm is for you. And then look to the areas in your life where you feel that you're getting life-giving moments and try to create one of those for yourself every day. Whether it's stepping outside, letting the sun hit your face, going for a walk, breathing, journaling, spending time with the Lord, whatever that is, but find something for yourself that is life-giving and do it regularly.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I know, Leanne, that you may need to go
Yeah.
at some point. So if you need to say goodbye, I'm just going to wrap us up in the next couple of minutes.
Great. You know what I do? I actually thank you for having me, Susan. Thank you, everybody. I am going to skedoodle. I've got a little bit of self-care to do right now. And so I'm going to not lose myself by loving y'all. And so I get to practice what it is that we're learning. Susan,
Mhm.
thank you so much. God bless y'all. We'll see you
Yeah,
soon.
thanks for being here, Leanne. And I just want to say, I see the question. I've realized I've done this since I was little, being concerned about those around me that I've lost or never discovered myself. How do you know who or what he's made you to be? It really takes some time of getting to know yourself, spending time with yourself, and not putting someone else above you for a time to see what comes up. I know Leslie's going to dive into this more in her training. I'm not okay if you're not okay. Who are you? Who does God make you to be? What is that self that you are? So I hope that you've registered and you are going to join. There's some things in scripture that God tells about who he's created you to be. You're created in his image. Obviously, you have been given unique strengths and gifts. So some people around you maybe will be able to help you see what those are if you don't see those in yourself. But scripture gives us very general terms about who God has made all of us to be and the purpose he has given us collectively to worship him, to advance his kingdom, to love our neighbors, those kind of things, to love God above all else. That's what he's made you to be. But there are very specific, unique things that you will discover as you listen to those around you speak about you, as you spend time with yourself, as you gain awareness and what brings you joy, and where you tend to thrive, where you lose track of time. Is often where you're so engaged and in the moment that speaks to a strength or a gift that God has given you. So I hope that helps, but I also would encourage you to register for the webinar because I think you'll get more help. Also, I just want to take a moment to cause you to reflect. I would love to see in the chat, what is God bringing to you from today? We've been together nearly an hour. What is your takeaway in this space? So go ahead and populate the chat as we close out our time, thinking about what you most need from this webinar, kind of setting your sights on that to kind of encourage you to show up on the 13th for that. But what's really empowering you from our time that we've had together today? I want to thank you all for being here. It's been great to be with you. We do have another live coming up on Thursday, 12:30 Eastern. That's tomorrow. Guarded heart versus hardened heart. What is your reality? This is an important topic too. This is something that gets skewed in our Christian culture. And so I want you to really be solid on knowing what is a guarded heart and what is a hardened heart. So join tomorrow as Diana speaks on this topic at 12:30 Eastern time. Thank you all, and we'll see each other again soon. Take care.